Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the 8th grade concept of trend lines, specifically how we can use them to predict future points, and we will do it in 5 minutes or less. So what we have here are two different coordinate grids. We're just looking at positive values now, so we're in quadrant 1. And what we will do is we'll just start looking for a pattern. Let's start with this one on the left. So you notice that my data is kind of moving from my very bottom point here, this 2, 3 right here. And it's kind of moving up, it's sloping up. And what we're doing is we're looking for a trend. So we're looking kind of like an average. And we're actually going to make a line because what we're going to be asking is, okay, so if our x is 14, and typically this comes in a problem situation. So if our x is 14, what would our y be? And we could also kind of flip that around and say, well, if our y is 19, what would our x be? So in order to make some predictions, we need to just draw a line that kind of follows the pattern. Now here's the thing, you want about the same number of points above and below the line. So it's going to be like an average. So I'm just going to kind of start right here, and I'm just going to kind of move it up in this direction, and I'm going to try to keep the same number of dots above and below. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Just keep it going straight, and we're off the grid. So that's my trend line, and now what I can do is I can use this trend line to make predictions for multiple points on this particular line. Now what you might notice is, you know, like right here, you've got 2 points above and you got 1 point below. So you're trying your best to kind of even it out, and you're looking for a straight line. What you're not looking for is something that kind of, you don't want like a wobbly line. You don't want an S or anything like this, or even something that curves. Not necessarily in 8th grade. You might see that, but these are linear relationships. So you're going to see more of a straight line. So you don't want any of those. So if I were to look for my best prediction of what would happen if my x is 14, right? So my x is 14 right here. So you just follow it up, and it looks like it's going to be about 14 and a half, right? It doesn't need to be exactly even. Let's call it 14.5. And so we're just making predictions here. My 19 is right here, and it looks like it's pretty darn close to the 19, maybe 18.8, but we'll just kind of round up. We'll say 1919. So we could actually make predictions from this. Now, what you're going to notice here on the one on the right is we're going to do the same thing, but this one is actually kind of moving back to the left, so that's fine. There's nothing that says it has to go from the origin to the top right, so it's going to move kind of up in this direction right here. And you're going to notice that there's going to be some outliers. And so this is an outlier. That means it doesn't really follow the trend, and you're just going to kind of ignore the outliers, right? Now, the data does need to be clustered like this and with a visible pattern. If the data is just kind of dotted all over the place, you really can't make a trend line. And so let's do the same thing. Let's say we're wondering, yeah, what happens if my x becomes 2? What would the y be? Or you might say, what happens if my y becomes 9? What would the x be? And so we're going to kind of move back up to the left, which means we need to kind of start our trend line here. And you have to look ahead. You want to make sure you're not going to make it wobblier. So it kind of starts a little bit tight here. But you notice it kind of spreads out towards the back. So you're just going to keep a nice straight line. If you have a straight edge, that's even better. Even just the side of a paper, side of a book really helps you there. So if our x is 2, right, we can now make a prediction here. Looks like that's going to be about 9.5. About, maybe it's a little bit more than 9.5, but we'll just round it to the nearest half decimal there, 9.5. And then if my x is, or my y is 9, it's pretty darn close. Looks like that's going to be 3. So in problem situations, there might be involving money or something like that, but that's how we can use trend lines to make predictions using graphs.